Becky here with the latest edition of the Armchair NBA. We are on day five. Let me check my notes. Or day six. Day six. No, I'm sorry, day five of the 30 for 30. 30 episodes, 30 minutes of working out every day, and 30 minutes of reading and or listening to Audible. Almost done with Robert Mastery. That is the book that I'm reading as part of the 30 for 30. If you haven't seen the Myron Sugarman interview, I highly recommend it. We did it live at my house. Check that out. Also, the Rita Gigante interview, where we kicked off the 30 for 30. So today, we're going to do something different. Sorry, my mic was a little over here. I'm going to do something a little different, change up a little bit. We're going to talk about the Knickerbocker Avenue Zips and the Bonanno Crime Family. So I'm going to introduce to you Frank Fiordilino, return guest of the show, former associate of the Bonanno Crime Family, also born in Castellamare del Golfo, Sicily, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. Frank, welcome back to the Armchair NBA. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Good morning. Let's go with the Sicilian. Let's go with the Knickerbocker Sicilians. I just don't like that zip shit.
Yeah. Well, actually, what's the origin to that? I heard a few different names or reasons.
I don't know.
Why.
All I know is it's derogatory, and I don't.
Got it. Okay.
A lot of Italian Americans used to use that on a slide to talk about it, Sicilians, and I don't know.
We definitely don't want to.
We don't like calling black people the N word. I don't like being.
Got it. Okay. So we will not use it, and we definitely do not want to piss off our Sicilian brethren. All right. So with that being said, let's jump in. The Italian diaspora, as we know, there were different waves. Early 1900s, late 1800s. Another big rush, in the 10s and 20s, 50s and 60s. That's when my parents came over, and then obviously in the 70s, even as well. I even have some friends that came over in the early 80s. Their parents. So walk us through. Where were you born, and when did you come over, Frank?
I was born in Italy in 1970, Castellamare del Golfo, and we immigrated to Bushwick in 72.
Oh, okay. So you were young. Okay. So yeah. What about, we talk a lot about, you can't talk about Castellamare del Golfo without talking about obviously Joe Bonnano. He was from there. Prior to that, the Castellamare Wars, Maranzano versus Masseria. So that kind of lays a foundation, but we want to kind of go even later and talk about the 70s, Knickerbocker Avenue, kind of set that up a little bit, Frank. Knickerbocker Avenue, 70s, Bonanno's, Sicilian neighborhood, kind of like the 18th Avenue of that part of Brooklyn. Set us up there, Frank.
We ended up in Bushwick because obviously Bushwick was a Castellamare's haven. A lot of Castellamare's immigrated there, and they had been immigrating to Bushwick and Williamsburg at the time since the 30s and the 20s even. And that's how we found ourselves there. We had a relative, my mother's brother actually, that lived in Bushwick, and we settled down. Me and my three brothers at the time, and my sister as well.
And, obviously chain migration was around even then. Similar to my family from Valata, Italy, went over to Elizabeth. Somebody settles in, says, "Hey, this is great." Everybody comes over. So that's kind of part and parcel for the course. What about Knickerbocker Avenue specifically? Right, there was a high concentration of Sicilians, Castellamare, and specifically the Bonanno family. So give us a little bit about kind of how it was. If I was in a Sicilian guy, civilian, tell us about the cafes, the baccarat games. Kind of set us up.
Most of the people I knew, even at a young age before I entered school, spoke Sicilian at home. Matter of fact, the schools, even in Bushwick, had a bilingual program and teachers that spoke Italian, the proper Italian, even though we were speaking Sicilian at home.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get that anymore in school. Nobody, that's how much immigrants from the other side were coming in.
Correct. So, there was an ESL for for Italians at the time. That was, I think, up until like kind of the 70s, maybe early 80s. I agree with that. That was also in New Jersey as well.
Right. So that was how many of us there was at the time out there in Bushwick. The stores, we had the Italian export import stores. They had the record stores. A lot of coffee shops that were fronts for card games. We had a lot of them at the time, and Knickerbocker in general. There was maybe 5 coffee shops. I remember there was like 2 on Irving. That was the avenue up, and then a couple on Whitecroft Avenue as well. There was a good 10 coffee shops, and they were all Sicilian coffee shops. Not many Italians. You had a couple Neapolitans or whatever, or Barres, but not many. You know, the fruit markets. Everybody bought fish in the fish stores back then. You know, it's not like today. They were all people from, like, the one guy was from my town. Actually, 2 of them was that sold fish, and you had the pizza shops as well. It was like being in another country, similar to if you were Korean and you were in Flushing. You know, you felt you were in another country, but that's how it was. And then things changed gradually. And I think like by 1977, after the blackouts and the looting and whatnot, the neighborhood started to change. They went from prominently Sicilian to the majority being Puerto Rican, even some Dominican as well.
Okay. What about card games? Did you ever, growing up, did you ever work a card game? Did you, when you're younger, check out those card games? I'd like to get a feel and kind of bring us back to that time.
Yeah, I mean, the card games came with working in a coffee shop. I ended up working in a coffee shop, as a lot of people know, at a young age. My brother owned one. And to own a coffee shop back then, you had to have connections, or you had to know somebody, because by the time my brother took over the coffee shop, we're talking about 82 or 83, the neighborhood was starting to get real bad. A lot of Italians had moved out at the time, and there was only like 3 coffee shops left. One was run by the Bonannos, the other one by the Gambinos, and it was called the Bella Palermo, and because most of the Gambinos, Sicilian zips, come from Palermo. And then there was another one down the block, the Cafe Viale, which is across from I don't know if it's still there, probably not. From Chico's Pastry Shop. You ever heard of that?
I did, actually.
It's a famous pastry shop. Been there for a long time. Good stuff.
Yeah.
It was directly across from there, and they were the only 3 left.
Was that hooked up, or was that a civilian spot?
I was a civilian spot, but I'm pretty sure back in the day they were paying.
Now, because I always like to give the history and backstory. So we know Castellamare, most people migrated over in terms of the organized crime portion of it, which is a very small portion, by the way. We're not saying everybody that came over got involved with organized crime, but those that did historically were Bonannos, right? Where Carlo Gambino were the Palermitani. When they came over and they kind of coexist that part of Brooklyn, was there any kind of beefs there, or did they kind of get along?
No, they got along really well, actually. They ran the seasonal baccarat game, and that was 3 months out of the year, and that was actually my uncle, my dad's brother, started that game in the 60s. I'm thinking like 68, 69. I could be wrong. During the Bonnano War that was going on, or maybe a little after, but around that time. And it was a joint venture with both the Gambino Sicilian faction and the Bonnano Sicilian faction.
Now, so one of the historical parts of it is, you had the French connection, which was, I believe, at that point kind of winding down a little bit. And then we'll get into the pizza connection a little bit. But the French connection, who was involved with that? Was that the Bonannos? Was that the Gambinos? Was it pretty much all the mafia at that point in the U.S.? Give us kind of your understanding of the French connection. And if you don't know about it, that's fine. But what
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I know that there was members of organized crime here involved in the in the actual French Connection.
Yeah.
And I knew it was out of Marseille, which is out in France, south of France, and it also has a high concentration of Southern Italians. So at the time, the whole route was Marseille and then New York, but
Correct.
it wasn't as organized crime involvement as like let's say the Pizza Connection, where
Well, that's
it
what
started getting.
I wanted to get to. So, like, give us a picture. Obviously, we're super young, but in the 70s, um, Knickerbocker Avenue, that kind of stuff, the Sicilians, did the heroin money start, pouring in and bring us maybe to the 80s when you were a little bit older, kind of a teenager? I want to kind of set the stage for like the transition of, it was dry for a while from the French Connection. The Pizza Connection pours in, billions of dollars pour in. Not, they say 1.6, but I think it was more. So all this money kind of comes in. A lot of those guys are in that way. Kind of set that up a little bit, like were these guys making money? What was the neighborhood like? What were they doing with their money? And what was kind of the feeling on the street back then?
By the time I seen that kind of money, I was living in Ridgewood. We had moved there in '79. That's about the same year that Carmine Galante gets killed.
Yeah.
And we get to see I get to see the money. The coffee shops that look like where you would hang out with your friends in the basement and stuff started having marble. You've seen a lot of nice cars.
Yeah.
A lot of flashy points, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was going on. Back to like as far as like when did the Sicilians that the Pizza Connection guys start getting involved in the drugs? Well, obviously Carmine Galante was involved in the drugs since the 50s, but this new generation, I would have to say, began after he got released out of jail about 74, 75.
And he's the one who kind of corralled that, because he was the one who's like, listen, we're going to, I don't care what the American Cosa Nostra thinks. We're going to do our thing. We're going to sell a shit ton of drugs. With money comes power. And he wanted to kind of take over the whole thing. That was kind of my understanding.
No, that's accurate. That was his mindset. And eventually that's what got him killed. But that was it. The misconception out of that is you didn't have to go far to, people go, well, he imported these, and I'm going to use the term, these zips from the other side, and he had them come over. No, they were already here. We didn't have to import nobody. They were Castellamines. They came from good pedigree, and that's what he was into. I mean, his daughter even said it, that he wishes he was Italian so bad, from the other side. That's the way he carried himself, and he figured that these are the people he wanted to align with.
Do you think strategically he made a mistake? Because, there was kind of that transition from, and you and I spoke, on other interviews, where by the time the 80s come, there's different kind of eras, right? I look at it, I want to give that era, that Galante era, early, mid 70s to late 70s, the Pizza Connection, some overlap, 75 to 85, and then 85 on, like probably 85 to 91, the John Gotti era. But like there was a transition away from kind of the Sicilian, Italian Cosa Nostra in the U.S. and became very Americanized 85 on. And almost like you said, you almost didn't recognize it. But before we get there, what's the relation of the Pizza Connection, right, and Galante? Because to me, I always have them as kind of two separate channels of distribution. I felt like he got his drugs obviously directly from Sicily, where the Pizza Connection, they got their money from Badalamenti, who was exiled in Brazil, and got it from the Mujahideen. So give us kind of like the parallels there. Where did they overlap?
Oh, okay, yeah. What do you mean?
So
You're losing me.
No. So Galante got his drugs directly from Sicily. I understand, right? He had his own connections. He was building out his Borgata. He wanted to take over the whole thing, right? Where the Pizza Connection was a little different. Although there was Bonannos involved with that, they, even in the mid 70s, even the 70s, they got their stuff from Badalamenti, a lot of those guys, not from Galante. I found them to be two separate heroin sources. Would you agree on that?
They got yes, definitely. But they got it from an exiled Badalamenti. They were getting their drugs from.
Correct. Not
Okay,
from.
and where there wasn't no turmoil when Galante was around. That started around 78, and those were the early stages back in Sicily, the turmoil. Before that, they were getting their drugs from Palermo. Palermo was the drug haven, was the haven for drugs, but until um the game changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then
It
on the
still
other
was.
side,
It was Toto Riena took over.
that's what I was going to get to kind of lay it out for everybody. Let's maybe have a wall, right? Pre-Galante, post-Galante. Pre-Galante, my opinion, you got it from Palermitani. The two major families that were doing it here were the Bonnano and the Gambinos, and they were like prospering, right? Then after Galante goes, again, in my opinion, in Sicily, Totorina kind of takes over the Palermitani. So he becomes now the Sicilian drug source. But then kind of concurrently, that's where Badalamenti, who was exiled, sets up shop with the Pizza Connection. So why don't you walk us a bit about who the players in the Pizza Connection were in terms of which families and maybe some of the players that you recall?
As far as the players go, the same ones. Tony Aiello, he was a tentacle of the case. Caesar Bomvetri, who doesn't make the case because he gets killed.
Yeah.
Who else was there? Obviously, there's Badalamenti.
Yeah. Well,
And there was a couple of others that I really don't want to get into.
No, of course. So, okay, so the Pizza Connection case happens. Enters Luigi Roncesvalli, right? Who literally volunteers to he kind of pulled similar to what John Panisi did. Wasn't under indictment. Wasn't really on the radar screen that much. Kind of popped in and said, "Hey, here's what I'm willing to offer," which is really unheard of at that time. He was from Catania, which I interviewed Mike Vecchione on Mobsters Inc. Check that out. I'll drop a link. Check above. You can watch that full interview. But I also have a lot of questions about it. That's why I kind of wanted you to have you on. He kind of hooked up with the Bonannos pretty early, even though he was from Catania. He hooked up with the Bonannos. And I got to give you my opinion. I don't think they ever took him serious. Sorry, the baby's crying. I don't think they ever took him serious. And I don't think he ever was going to be made. So what do you know of him, as far as what you heard?
Well, first of all, at that time, the Catanese, or people from Catania, weren't really in the inner circles of those, either from Palermo or Castellammare del Golfo. So we could go to I think he tries to endear himself with a certain Joe Del Guano.
Yeah.
Who's we know him as who was shelved in his own right within the Castellamare. He's respected but shelved. And that had a lot to do with the moral compass. He abandoned his family back in Italy, and he had 3 sons and 1 daughter, I believe. And then he married the ex-wife's cousin and came to America and had 2 other kids, which was like a big, big no-no in Cosa Nostra, and especially within the people of my town.
Yeah.
And he was given the fucking nickname Joe the Shithead. So in Italian. So,
I got it.
So now, this guy's saying that he was really taken back because he had that presence. He played the mobster pretty good. Utupanutu did, the Guano. So I could see somebody who being an outsider feeling that he was a little bit more than he was. He got the respect from my paisans to say hello and goodbye to because he was from there. And don't get me wrong, he was a type. If you flared him up pretty much, he'd probably shoot you. Most definitely, but he was definitely outside the realm. He was shelved in his own way.
Yeah. Well, that's why you need to watch these podcasts, read the books, look at even Wikipedia for some cases, because if you just go by the book, Luigi Roncesvalli had him as kind of being a very big player. And I'm not saying he wasn't, but he was definitely subordinate.
No, I'm telling you, he wasn't.
No, and he's definitely subordinate to Toto Catalano and those guys. So it's kind of interesting where, like, to Luigi, he was a big guy, but to other guys, he wasn't so much. Are you familiar with the Romano case, the Newark detective whose sister pretty much got pimped out by her husband? Because that was in the book, and I kind of scratched my head with that one too. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not. No, I've read a couple of transcripts on the guy. I
Yeah.
don't remember anybody ever talking about him having
Yeah.
any kind of significance. As like I know he cooperated because I read about that, but
Yeah.
I mean to parallel the significance, let's say of a Bouchette or something, not even close. You know,
Not
this
even
guy.
close. Yeah, that's
No,
not
but
it.
that's what I'm trying to say. He's
Yeah.
whoever took him on the case. And back then you got to remember there wasn't too many rats. So this guy just saying what he was saying and getting into these places where most people couldn't get in, like even to play cards or do whatever the hell he was doing.
Yeah.
They probably were like, "Oh wow, we got a big guy here." I do
Well,
read somewhere that he was he claimed to go on a drug run,
yeah.
and that some guy came with the Corvette to do the switch,
Yeah.
and the Corvette had what it had in the car, and they would do the switch, and then he would leave. The guy gave him his Corvette. I knew this guy. He lived up. He was like family to us. He lived on the second floor. We lived on the first floor on Fresh Pond Road, and and he didn't have a Corvette.
Mm.
I knew what he had. He had a Cadillac, a gray
Yeah.
one, and then he had a Lincoln, a black one. He didn't have a and you know, I just think he was piecing a lot of stuff. I don't know what had he got in trouble for something and probably thought by putting these people involved in a I just don't find them credible.
Got it. There was one murder that was tied back to him that was kind of documented. It was I think a restaurant chef or owner. What he did was he pretty much sexually assaulted his niece, and it was ongoing. The family found out about it, went to a Sicilian captain in the Gambino family, Mirabili, and said, "Hey, listen, this is happening." Which I think they contacted the Bonnano guys because they knew Luigi, and Luigi killed the guy who did it. It was a new corner restaurant or something like that in Brooklyn, and he wound up,
Right.
he wound up killing the guy. My question to you is, when did the mob stop doing kind of the honor killings in the U.S.? You know, again, I'm not going to say details, but I know of a story where something similar happened. They went to some wise guys, and the wise guys responded like, "We'll lump them up, but we're not going to kill them." And that's like current day. My question
I
to
don't
you,
know. I mean, when I was around, that shit happened. You'd get killed.
yeah. So honor killings, would you say probably 80s, maybe early 90s?
I was out. You know, you committed one of those moral crimes. You were paying for it.
Yeah.
Bottom
Yeah.
line, you know, yeah. There's yes.
Okay. So now enters the Luigi and his, participation, the French Connection. I'm sorry, the Pizza Connection case, and Knickerbocker Ave. At that point, already been like kind of like changed over in terms of ethnicity and people that live there. Just like everything else in America, it's always transitioning. What happened post Pizza Connection case? Because that's when kind of you were on this street, starting to get out there and stuff. Was there any remnants left, or were kind of the Bonanno Sicilians done out of the drug game? I want to get a feel for post Pizza Connection. What was that like on the street?
It's like a recession. It was the money that was there a couple of years before was dwindling. There was not that card games were not as lucrative as they used to be. It looked like a lot of things would change. The neighborhood was changing. And it never recovered. The money situation never recovered. Even the Baccarat game, it was so. I mean, are you familiar with a Texas Hold'em table?
Naturally. Holds
All
10,
right.
11 people.
Well, picture a table like that, full with money, stacked to about a double, you know, and people put money from the outside and everything like that. That's what kind of money there was, you know.
Wow.
And then a couple like I don't know, 1990, it would be not even close to that. Lucky if you had $10,000 or 15,000 on an auction.
Yeah. Now, I'm just giving you my experience growing up around a lot of Sicilians, talking not in the life, and grow up with a lot of Italian immigrants. Frugal's an understatement, right? For a lot of these guys, at least on the civilian side for Italians. And then also very like big on leaving money to their kids, money to their family, that kind of stuff. did that wealth from the pizza connection, as far as you know, a lot of those guys, did that go to the kids? Did the kids get it? Did they, legally or illegally, did guys buy property? I want to get a feel for that transference of wealth, because I do know, again, I see two extremes. I've seen a lot of connected families where the sons and daughters, go on to professional positions and inherit a lot of money and they're kind of free and clear. Then I hear of situations where guy was making $100 million a year and now they're dead broke. You know what I mean? Like, what has been your experience about, maybe in general? Obviously, it's not the hard and fast rule, but was there?
I've seen all the extremes. I mean, I've seen all the extremes, but mostly a lot of that money got forfeited after the forfeiture laws. I think they came out in 84 and 85.
84. Yeah, there was a cutoff. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, there was some families that kept it, but then they had lawyer fees, appeal fees, just being the only providers in that house and putting their kids. That money dwindled,
So, question to you, Frank, and I never asked you this. Growing up, you saw the money, right? Like, it's simple. Like, you growing up, you're a kid, you're impressionable. It's your formative years, right? And then you kind of saw these gangsters that were making drug money. You didn't know where it came from because you were young, and maybe as older, you saw that it did. And then when you got into life, that shit was gone in a weird sort of way. Did you feel like you got cheated? You know what I mean? Like when you got into it, that cheese moved. You know what I mean? And that cheese was gone forever. And then there's other ways to make money and hustle, but they're a lot harder, frankly, in terms of, revenue and margin. What happened when you got in? What was like, okay, hey guys, we're out of the drug game. We're going to do A, B, and C. And B, were you like, when you got into life and you realized maybe there wasn't as much money in it, how did you feel about that?
I wanted fast money. So
yeah.
and I talked about this over and over and over. I told you I wasn't a money guy.
Yeah.
So I had opportunities to make money in the way the people with good money management skills had. I had that opportunity all day.
Yeah.
I could have put money out. I wasn't good at that either. I didn't have the patience to wait. Sports, didn't have the patience to put 100 or 200 people under my book. I'm pretty much just living day by day, and that's what I was doing. So I think I told you at one time I thought I wasn't even going to make it 35. So
yeah,
I mean, the scheme. I know you're a money guy. I know you're into numbers. I know this and that, but it's hard to explain. I'm not.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
One thing though is some live day by day and spend cheap is understanding. They don't want to pay for anything. That's true. But one thing that stood out though, and I don't mean to blow up, like we were talking one day and I was trying to nail you down for money. And like, you were like, I don't know. But what was interesting was, I think you gave a number and I don't want to release it, but like the number wasn't bad for that time. Like, meaning like you weren't this millionaire, running around in the Cadillac and driver, but like relative to other people, you were doing okay. You know what I mean? Like, so at the time when you were on the street, did you feel like, you had enough, or did you always want more? Because you said you were into fast money. I want to get a feel for that.
There wasn't no money that would I like the fast life. I like going out. I like going gamble. I like to hang out with chicks. That's what I like.
Now I remember
I did work. Yeah, I had these little jobs that I probably made in 3 months more than the average grown-up made in 3 months. Yes.
So you spent
card game. Yeah, I would spend it. Easy coming to go.
Okay. So again, I always try to draw parallels to the Italian culture, Italian American culture, and obviously the Italian mafia culture, because they're essentially not the same, but there's parallels, obviously, right? But one thing I heard a story where Gotti saw somebody and he was either buying something or saving or doing something that a normal kind of Italian guy would do. And Gotti said to who he was with something along the lines of, where's this guy going? Why is he trying to save up? Why is he trying to like almost better himself? Because we all know we're going to end up dead or in jail, right? So was that the gangster mentality? Like, I want to get behind the mentality of a gangster. Because again, to me, when I think of the Italian culture, savers, put money away, be stingy, be frugal. And then, you know what, when the old man dies, whether you get a cash or you got it, from inheritance, they kind of looked out for their kids. Italian American gangsters, in your opinion, did they look out for their kids, or were they just fucking pretty much all terrible with their money?
No, it's just people are people, no matter where they're from.
Yeah.
It seems like they're Americanized. They're born in this country. They don't know really what it's like to
Sacrifice.
and I fall into that category. You know, I was
Yeah.
spoiled. They don't know what it's like to live the hard life, you know, and then come here and all of a sudden they feel they're always saving for a rainy day. You get that a lot from the people from the other side. But
Yeah.
it's understandable. But you got Italian Americans that were great earners in the mob, you know. It's
Yeah.
just on I think the people to people basis.
Got it. Now we talked about this in terms of after Post Pizza Connection, kind of the Gotti era, the Italian American Cosa Nostra, Italian Cosa Nostra members changed, became more Americanized. What's the biggest difference of maybe a late 80 American gangster versus a mid 70s Sicilian American gangster? Give us kind of the biggest differences in your opinion.
I said this to you on many shows. I said one tried to hide who they were, and the other ones wanted you to know who they were.
Yeah. You're a smart guy. Did you kind of see that as like, you know, while you're in the life when you saw that? Did you kind of say to yourself, Jesus, this is the beginning of the end? Or were you blind to that?
I was definitely blind to it. I was attracted to it.
Yeah.
You know, I was attracted to the showy and, you know, in your face type of attitude. The intimidation. What is he gonna do? Call the cops? Fuck him, I'll come back.
Yeah. Now, kind of fast forward because we're wrapping up soon. I wanted to do a quick one with Frank and jump on, and I appreciate Frank for jumping on and sharing his time with us. Later on in like 17, there was Operation. Well, there's Operation Old Bridge, which was in I think late 2010s, and then Operation New Bridge, where actually Rosario Gambino went back to Sicily and they kind of reconnected, you know, that pipeline. I think at this point, the Colonese still kind of control that. What do you, in your opinion, this is just strictly opinion, not direct fact, because you've been out of life a very long time and you're on the straight and narrow. But what do you think of your opinion of like the reconnection of specifically the Gambinos with the Gambinos here and that Sicilian heroin pipeline? Because there is a lot of proof to show there is some reconnection there. Just give us your opinion as maybe as an analyst, if you will.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think they would get involved in. I don't think they're getting involved in the drug game at all. Not after what they've seen, the downfall. I mean, you're getting dinosaur years. I think that's a thing of the past.
What kind of run can you get as a heroin dealer in the mafia? 4 or 5 years, 10 years? What kind of run could you expect? At best.
Probably an Olympics, 4 years.
Got it. Have you, not saying names, and I know of one or two, and I'm not going to say them either. I know some folks that got into the game pretty heavily and got out pretty heavily.
Right.
Very few. I'm talking, I can count on my left hand. You know, if you guys that got in and got out with some cash and didn't get pinched?
No, one way or the other, they had some kind of repercussion.
Yeah. No.
And you know, there was always like that one guy who got away or two, and then, you know, from an indictment. And unfortunately, you know what happens when that happens? People start spreading rumors.
Ask him if you. Who is this?
I actually do. The Wiener Spritzel. That's a German restaurant on in Glendale, Queens.
Oh, cool. Oh my God. When I went to Vienna and I had Wiener Schnitzel for the first time, I think I had it for 3 meals a day for 4 days straight. I love Wiener Schnitzel. Oh my God. It's my favorite. Austrian Vienna's food is excellent.
Oh yeah. No, that's a great restaurant. If you ever around there, it's been there forever. My favorite was the hamburger on the English muffin.
Yeah, exactly.
And the goulash was really good too.
I love goulash. So, all right. So now, and I'm going to cover a little bit more. And the reason why I wanted Frank on too was I wanted to cover a little bit of the Knickerbocker area, and then I'm going to migrate over to Canada. I got a special treat for everybody there in a few days. But Canada kind of grew strong, like versus, and we know they've done on RICO, lesser sentences, more liberal guidelines. We kind of know all that, right? But in general, though, outside of that, what do you think the Italian Cosa Nostra, whether it be in Dragata or Sicilian Cosa Nostra or local Cosa Nostra to Italian Canadian, Why do you think that kind of prospered in a way? Why the Americans fell by the wayside? In your
Laws.
opinion?
We talked about that. The laws here. RICO. Every component. The deals cooperators are getting. All that stuff. You know, this is if you want to commit crime, this is the wrong country.
Yeah. True.
You
Well,
know?
unless you're part of the government, but
You want to be a drug runner, do it in another country and send the stuff over. Don't do it here. You're gonna get screwed.
Do you ever deal with any of the slug? Did you ever deal with
What's
any guys
that?
from the Bronx?
Did I deal with anybody from the Bronx? No. I knew people from the Bronx, but I didn't deal with them.
Got it. So okay, so it's pretty obvious why the Canadian situation took over. Through different sources, my understanding though, post Pizza Connection, the Canadians kind of took the drugs from Sicily and other areas and were porting that in the U.S. And there was some evidence of that with Domenico Violi being the underboss.
I'm sorry,
over
Slug. That's
Slug
funny.
well,
It's
Slug,
funny.
I'm still working on the Unpack These Nuts shirts. Slug will buy the first one. I'm migrating my merch store over. I haven't had time to finish it up, so I got to finish that. No, because I heard like kind of the Sicilians in Sicily in Canada kind of took over, a lot of the stuff there. And then you and I were talking about Sal Montagna. Give us a little bit about what your thoughts were on Sal, and then how he tried to take over Canada and what happened there.
I liked Sal. I actually met Sal on vacation in 1990, I think, in Italy, in Sicily, in my town. And then
he was from Castellamare?
Yeah.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was from Castellamare del Golfo. Families go back as well. And he was a good kid, and all of a sudden he was getting mentored by a certain individual in the family, also another paisan, and next thing I knew, he was made.
He shot up pretty quick. Why do you think?
Money. He was a money guy. He knew how to make money. He wasn't a violent guy. I'm pretty sure if he had to, he would do something, but he wasn't a violent guy.
So when he got deported and went to Canada, and then
he wasn't a pushover. That's what I'm trying to say, huh?
Yeah, he got deported and then went over to Canada, and then allegedly tried to take it over, and then Versa Rizzuto's got double crossed by Desjardins, and then wound up getting killed. Were you surprised by all that? Like, because I would think he would come up to Canada, maybe meld in politically, be a little Machiavellian and take over that way. But he tried to do it through, I believe, brute force and deception, like short-term deception. What was your thoughts when you heard he got killed in Canada?
I was surprised, but at the same time, I think he that momentum built in his head from other people making him think he was something he wasn't. Especially the Daily News, if you remember, they started calling him the next boss.
The baby
band, yeah,
baby boss, yeah.
From Castellamare del Golfo, they're going old school, and like I said before, it was like a fairy tale. You all want to go back to 1931, but that's not how legends are made, by talk. Legends are made by yourself. And he went there, and I just felt that he walked in a ring with Mike Tyson. It was expected.
Now, again, we're going to get into this, and I know that you're not from Canada, but you have some knowledge, or again, at least your opinion. Kind of the transition away from the Bonannos, from the Rizzutos, was when Sal Vitale went over and allegedly was told to kick rocks. But that was when Messina was very powerful. Do you believe that to be true, that story, or do you think it might be fabricated? Because maybe now the Canadians are strong, and now they're like kind of have the narrative. But what do you think about that story where Messina, after Lopresti got killed, they sent up Sal Vitale up there to kind of say, hey, you guys got to get in line, and then allegedly told him to kick rocks. What do you think of that story?
Not many people are telling Joe Messina to kick rocks.
Well, that's why I push and pull on that.
Now, did Joe probably did not like the answer Sal got, or the way they dummied up to him, or played like they didn't know what he was talking about? Yeah, that's possible. But as far as like they telling him to get the fuck out of here, no, that did.
Well, one guy that I think gets not enough press. I know they wrote a book, Six Family, but Vito Rizzuto, man, I mean, he was serious. He owned, stuff in Dominican Republic, casinos. He controlled the drug trade. He was involved with all the construction. I don't know if you know, but there was a trial in Italy where they were going to build a bridge, like $1 billion bridge
I
from, I
heard
think,
about it.
Catania to Italy, and he was in on that. Like,
Right,
you
to
know what I mean?
straighten
Like,
Messina.
so like to me, like that was international reach, right? So why does a guy like Rizzuto have like such strong international reach, where like a Messina was very powerful, don't get me wrong, but was kind of local? That's why I think the mob in the US kind of messed up too. I think it got too insular, where I think Canada thought outside. What do you think of maybe the differences between a Rizzuto and a Messina, in your opinion?
Well, one's domestic and stays domestic. The other guy, he's come from the other side, and he's been connected to the other side ever since he came to Canada. So
Yeah.
that's always been open. That's the difference. The difference is he lived in both worlds, where the other one didn't.
Now, to kind of go back to the U.S., it was Sal Ruggiero as well as Frank from Canada. They got their drugs from the Caruana Contreras family, which was, as you know, a Sicilian family that I know now people push and pull. Some say it's kind of defunct, others say it went underground and still brokering. I still think they're around. I think they're actually broker for the Indragata and so forth. But then, like after kind of that died down in the U.S., the Calabrians in Italy took over, in Australia, and even in Canada. You was kind of a guy that grew up around Cosa Nostra, grew up with these people, kind of post Corleonese. I think that was the best thing to happen to the Calabrians. What is your thought on kind of the Calabrians takeover in these critical drug markets, and even locally, and even as close as Canada? And there's evidence that they're now operating in New York. I just did a piece on that. They just arrested an Adrini family, 18 of them, in the U.S. by the FBI, where the names weren't even released. So what do you think of that kind of like power shift from Cosa Nostra over to Indragata, in your opinion? Just as your opinion.
I don't know. My opinion is with the relationships I've had, or the and this is outside the box, because I don't know. I never, with the Calabrian mob, I really never had any kind of dealings at all.
Yeah.
But what I do know about the Calabrians that do commit crime they're very close knit. They're very family. Like they're the Sicilians go back. They go back a little bit further. You know what I mean? To their old ways.
Yeah.
That's what I always got from them. So I don't know. It's their turn to shine, and it's their turn to hit the wall. You know what I mean?
True.
Like I told you, if you're gonna commit crime, if you think you're gonna run a drug empire in this country, you're crazy. And I'm pretty sure that the mob guys know that too. They're not. So when people ask, "Oh, do you think they're still doing this and that?" My answer is no.
Well, it's interesting enough is because the Indragata essentially ignored the largest drug market in the world and prospered as a result. So they made a strong strategic decision. And I don't know if you know how they got big, which is actually, I think, against Cosa Nostra rules. They made their money in kidnapping. In the 80s.
Well, back in the day, yeah, they were
Correct.
always known for kidnapping. I mean, you go back
Correct.
to Getty's grandson.
Yep.
But yeah,
you know how they arrived at the amount that they arrived at, right? They wanted like 10 million, and he wound up giving them, a few 100,000 or whatever it was, or a million, whatever it was. Did you ever hear how they arrived at the amount? It's pretty interesting.
How they rounded off? No.
So what happened was they had their demand, which is way high. So Getty gave a certain amount, and that amount was only the amount that he could write off on his taxes, and then the rest, the other, I think 1.2 million or whatever it was, and then the other 800,000. His son, who the kid's father, who was kidnapped, gave a loan at 4% over like 20 years. So he's like, all right, I'll pay this. I can write this off on my taxes, but the remainder is a loan to you. You got to pay me back. That's how shrewd Getty was about getting his son back. It's insane.
Yeah, I know. They rip his ear off.
Yeah, they ripped the ear off, so they were serious. And it wasn't Dragata. It wasn't like some like ragtag organization.
No, I get it.
But he didn't care. He cared about his money. Why did the owner backdrafts end up in his car? You know that story?
Is he talking about the guy who ended up with his thing in his mouth?
I guess so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so really quick too. I want to, and again, I told Frank, I know Frank, I'm not expect Frank to know any of these people, but I like Frank's opinion. We talk on the phone a lot. So I always hit him up. Like anything comes up, I always get his opinion. He's a lot more
Let me give
insightful.
Demetrius Melis, Greek name. Yeah, that freaking series, it was horrible.
I thought it was a little over dramatized, and I had
wasn't it bad?
I had Tony Nicasso on, and I think his real story was better than the fictionalized. I don't know why they went the way they did. I thought it was okay to give some color and context, but Tony Nicasso's real story on it, I think, was better. But I agree.
Oh, that was based on his
Yeah, that was Antonio Nicasso's book. Yeah.
The Bad Blood.
Yeah, but they butchered the shit out of it. Like the guy from Sons of Anarchy was basically Desjardins. They kind of overplayed that hand. They kind of made Rizzuto seem kind of schlubby at the end, in my opinion. It wasn't. I wanted it to be better, and it could have been better, but it wasn't. You know,
the makeup, everything was good. The whole like they had like it was like the United Colors of Benetton. They were all in one room.
Yeah, it was rough. Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you do you watch Tulsa King?
I haven't yet. I haven't. I heard it. I can't put Stallone in mob movies. It just it fucks me up.
Well, I say if you're like a mobologist, don't watch it, because if you're too serious about it, not you are, but I'm saying there's people that are really serious about this stuff. Black Hand Forum and the mob, it's not for you. But if you like a little tongue in cheek, a little fun, I think it's a good show. Just one last question before we go. The Camorra, right? Which is a little different than even Ndrangheta and Cosa Nostra, very clannish, not as many pentiti, not as many informants. Raffaele Imperiale created what is called the super cartel with the Kinahan clan and the Rotterdam clans. Was it Morocco? Anyway, they created a super cartel that included Italians, other organizations. He was in Dubai living freely. They basically did a rendition, extracted him illegally, brought him back to the U.S. The guy was only facing like 15, 20 years. Him and this guy, Carbone, are flipping. And to be honest, this is not Sammy the Bull flipping version. This, Mokra, that's it. This is not Sammy the Bull flipping. This is actually John Gotti flipping. The guy is a whale, had like $120 million Van Gogh. What's your opinion? Because you don't hear a lot out of the Camorra. What's your opinion when you if you haven't heard it until now, of a Camorra boss actually flipping and turning state's evidence? What are your thoughts on that, Frank?
Signs of the times, that's what's going on. It's only going to get worse,
Yeah.
It's happening in Italy, and bosses are flipping. That's why, these guys are in the life. These days, if you want to be in the life, go ahead. But look what's going on. Look around you,
Yeah, definitely not sustainable. Well, Frank, listen, I'll give you the closing remarks. Thanks for coming on. This was meant to be kind of a quick one, part of the 30 for 30. I wanted to kind of cover some of the Knickerbocker Avenue Sicilians, the Bonannos, migrate over to Canada a little bit, and then just get your expert opinion while you were on. So I'll leave you with the final words, Frank, before we conclude.
That's it, I guess. It was fun. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Always good to have you back. We'll have you on soon. And thank everybody for checking out the show. I'll be back tomorrow with the next version of the 30 for 30. I might have to do 2 in one day because I missed 2 days because of Christmas. I'll see you all soon.
Okay. Thank you.